Greetings and welcome to the University of Minnesota Alumni Association's webinar series. My name is John Ruzek and I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Networks and your host today. Happy New Year! It's the first webinar of 2017. Hope you and yours are doing well, and thank you for taking time to join us live today. Today we're going to be talking with a great alumnus about forming your own personal board of advisors, being purposeful about cross-pollinating networks, and creating communities of interest that can help you achieve your goals in life, career, and more. Today's webinar is part of an ongoing free series being offered by the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, where we're having conversations with experts about career, life, and learning topics. And just this past fall semester alone, we had over 1,000 day of webinar attendees and over 1,200 YouTube views. And since we started this webinar series 2.5 years ago, we've had over 5,500 attendees live and over 14,000 YouTube views. So thank you for your participation. Initiatives like these are made possible in part by our Alumni Association members. And because of your membership, we can create powerful opportunities for students, alumni, and our entire 466,000 alumni network around the world. And if you're interested in joining us, just visit that URL at the top right, umnalumni.org/membership. Upcoming webinars, we have a whole slate of them ready to go for the fall, spring. You can find that at umnalumni.org. On February 2nd, Healthy Meal Prep on a Budget. February 16th, Professional Presence with Maggie Thomas of the Carlson School's Graduate Business Career Center. And joining us again on February 23rd will be best-selling author Richard Leider, talking about repacking on purpose, managing life transitions. So if you haven't signed up for those, please do. Just a couple other virtual things since you're web savvy and have joined us today. On February 8th, we'll be having a virtual networking event through our Brazen platform where we're seeking alumni and friends who are willing to share career advice with current students, such as job search tips, interview tips, how to navigate a career fair. You can find that at umnalumni.org/virtual as well. And also on that page, if you're into the Twitter, you can join us on February 15th for our UMN career chat. And the topic we'll be talking about navigating a career fair. So whether you're a student or an alumnus who might be navigating some career or job fairs, you can hear some from some alumni and friends and recruiters who will be giving some tips over Twitter over the noon hour, and we'll also archive that Twitter conversation. So if you can't catch it live, you can read it later. A few housekeeping items using GoToWebinar today. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you'd prefer to listen over the telephone, just hit the telephone option in the audio pane of your GoToWebinar panel and dial-in information will be displayed. If you experience audio difficulties while listening via your computer, this can be caused by having multiple software applications open, or perhaps listening off a wireless signal. So close any unneeded things and perhaps move over to a hardwired connection. There will be time after the presentation where we'll be taking some questions, and you can submit them at any time. You can type those into the questions pane on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we definitely would love to hear from you. So now to the good stuff. It is my pleasure to introduce alumnus Clint Schaff, who is a communications executive, educator, and entrepreneur with 16 plus years of integrated marketing and agency management experience. He aims to drive advocacy through communications and leverage social and digital media to foster community and drive collaboration. He is currently the Vice President of Strategy and Development for the Los Angeles Times newspaper, and he has served as an adjunct professor for USC's Annenberg School for over 8 years in its digital, social media, and strategic public relations master's degree programs. And he's also a volunteer leader for many worthy organizations such as the New Leaders Council, Public Relations Society of America, the Social Media Club, and most importantly to us, he is a dedicated national board member for the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, and we appreciate his service on the board, and we appreciate his time and presentation he's going to share with us today. So welcome, Clint.
Hey, good afternoon to you, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's I don't know what the temp is in California, but it's about high 30s here, so we'll take it for mid-January.
Oh my gosh. Well, it sounds like a heat wave over there, and let's get it hot here on this webinar.
Let's get it on.
All right, excellent. As John said, we're here to talk about how to create networks. I'm not a professional network maker. I'm just a guy who's done a few interesting things, and I give all credit to my networks. I want to share a few of the tips that have helped me do that over the years. First off, I want to thank you all for your attention and for joining us today. And I'm happy to connect with any of you after this webinar as well, as per my strategy for networking. Before we get into this, I think I just want to make the overall point of today is that we can do better with our friends. That extends in all areas of life. If you're a sports fan, typically it isn't always the teams that have the most talented athletes. It's often the teams that play best together. It isn't always the team. In this case here, the Beatles are pictured, and these four gentlemen obviously did great things as individuals, but together they performed their best music. It's no coincidence that in Renaissance Italy that Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, all these great folks came out of the same era in the same place. There's something to be said about community. So, taking the cue from our friends, the Beatles, on the previous slide, we're going to be looking at how do we go from getting by with a little help from our friends to thriving with a little help from our friends. So today, as John mentioned, I'm a fellow Gopher as well, class of 2000, and we're going to look at I'm going to share my framework for how I create communities and conversations with the goal of driving collaboration for mutual benefit. And I do this in my personal life and at home, and you can do the same. It's January, mid-January, and it's a good time to look back at how this year is going. Many of us start the year with a couple things: a hangover, and secondly, with New Year's resolutions. As we set New Year's resolutions, we often have there's some common ones here listed on the PowerPoint. Perhaps we want to we want to eat less, we want to travel more, we want to find a new job, we want to get a promotion, we want to be a better spouse, we want to have a better relationship with important people in our lives. And so I wanted to ask, if we could do the poll here, John, do a quick check-in and see how everyone's doing in regards to their New Year's resolutions.
So we just threw it up. How is the progress on your New Year's resolutions coming along? And we'll give you just a few seconds here to select your choice, and then we'll report back on the overall. So just a few more seconds. All right, Clint, can you see the results?
I can, absolutely. So let's see here. Gosh, let me do my math. I'm not a math major. 87% of folks are not feeling as great about their goals as they might like, and we're only in the beginning, midway through January. So I think that's it says a lot about the power of resolutions and how oftentimes we fall a little flat. Which I make the point here. The good news is maybe the hangover is gone, but our resolve to make these changes in our life dissipates rather quickly. And the result is something like this, where 1 year's goals get pushed off to the next year. And so, or we change those goals to seemingly make them more attainable in order to have a feeling achievement. But deep down, we know that we're not getting the life that we deserve and that we really set out to have. That leads me to my first question here for the group, is how's that working out for you? Of course, this is a one-way webinar, so I won't get a response to that, but this is kind of the tough love question here, is that we need to find a better way in order to advance our lives and to get closer to accomplishing our goals, and perhaps we can do that with a feeling of community. So I like to set out with a problem to solve. Our problem to solve today is that we set goals and they don't stick. And it's because we don't have a community around us to accomplish our goals. I'll quickly introduce myself. I'm Clint Schaff, as John said. I'm at the LA Times, and I've had a lot of different iterations in my relatively short career, all through following these tips. The personal motivation for this sort of networking that I hold so dear is that I grew up in a small town in rural North Dakota. There were maybe 10 people within 2 miles of me. And I was the youngest by 10 years in a family of 4 siblings. And so I spent a lot of time alone. And so my winning formula I learned was that I was always going to gather as many people as I could along the way. When I met someone at a youth camp or something like that, and even if they lived far away, I was going to try to stay in touch with them because I liked that. I was seeking community so strongly. And taking that into my adult life, that's led to a lot of interesting experiences. I don't want to do a whole brag slide here, but like being a USC professor came out of, I graduated from a program. I assembled a networking group, an unofficial alumni association of the program, and in doing so became the connective tissue of that degree program, and went on to be asked to be a professor in it. Nearly all the jobs and opportunities I've had have come through networking using the tactics that we'll discuss today. Including I got married late last year, just over a month ago, and actually met my wife using one of the strategies that I will share today. So if I haven't promised enough, new jobs, new love, all these things, the real promise today is I'm going to share with you at least 5 tools on how to achieve at least a moderate level of success and happiness working with people around you and developing communities. So these are the 5 that we're going to go through. So this is basically an outline for the remainder of our presentation. We're going to talk about goals, creating a team to support you, having some peer mentors, always recruiting more people to collaborate with, which I think is an important point and understated. And then finally, like, how do we celebrate accomplishing goals so we can hold ourselves accountable and keep momentum going? So that's our outline for today. If you happen to have some paper around you, there might be some opportunities to jot down some notes. And at least if you could have 5 for each of those main sections, then you can follow along best. If not, you can, of course, take the recording of this webinar later and do this on your own time. Great. First, we will talk about goals. Now, as we talk about, jump into this section, this is not a goal-setting webinar. In fact, that's there's no shortage of those online, right? You can you can do a lot of Googling to find goals. I'm going to share with you a frame. Well, we'll just jump in here. So we all know about goals. There's a lot of different ways to set them. Many of you probably heard of SMART goals, which I think stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-specific goals. There's all these different frameworks, and if that interests you, I encourage you to look more into it. One template that I use is basically brainstorm the goals of my overall life and then chunk them down into short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. I prioritize those goals. I set a focus. I set a plan of action, and I go for it. And that's usually where this conversation ends. But we know from our poll that often doesn't go as far as we would like. I'm going to share with you guys one quick resource. Let's switch toggle here. Hopefully, okay. Just one resource, actually from a Minnesota alum named Eric Thiegs. And he has this great website here called stageoflife.com. If you go to their goal setting page, there's some really nice resources. And this is actually the worksheet that I, Clint Schaff, actually use to set goals, there's a pretty substantial and meaty list of areas, and I set goals this way. Of course, there's no shortage of these sorts of solutions. Oops, all right, let's go back here. So do find the one of your liking. So that's our first step here. Select your favorite goal setting framework. The part that often is missed, and is missed even in Eric's thing, is to add the names of the people who can help you, which we'll talk about in a moment. Draft it all on a table, on a paper, digitally, or writing, and then come back to it in a week and make sure it's right. It's easy to set goals and then feel like they're not right, and then you're stuck with them, then you change them, and you get on this vicious circle of compromises. What you want to do here is just don't put a lot of pressure on to get it right away. Get it all down, and then come back to it in a week and say, am I really committed to these goals, or do I need to have less, or did I really hit the key areas? So this is a very rough template of how that could look, and how it might look for me. I set these different areas, goal areas on the left. I'll use that phrase later, called goal areas. And I like to also include why it's important. So that way, if I'm struggling, getting up to go to the gym at 6 in the morning, I can remind myself, well, it's important because I want to live a long life, and so on. But the column I want to call your attention to is the one on the far right of helpful supporters, because our whole point here today is that we can't do it without support around us. So whatever goal you pick, please add those names to the goals that you create. So after this webinar, I encourage you, with the first piece of paper that you have, to start to jot out these goals. You probably already have them in your head. You might have been writing them in the margin of your notebook. So do collect them on one comprehensive document that you'll come back to in a few days, and list the supporters who will help you get there. Once you have those supporters, then you're going to set up a team, and you have those goals to help direct your life. So I serve on the University of Minnesota Alumni Association Board of Directors. What we do there is we help steer the Alumni Association's efforts. We provide oversight and some management advice. We serve as a resource sometimes to make introductions. We have financial oversight. And those are some of the things we do at the UMAA. You're looking to create a similar board for yourself, a group of people who are invested in you with that same amount of rigor, so that they're making it, they're looking that your success is one of their top goals. So you want to surround yourself with people who are invested in helping you accomplish your dreams. Think of yourself as a company, and you're looking for the best advisors. And so personal board of directors, which I call PBOD for short, it's a mouthful. You can see here it's all the different areas, and you can determine what those areas are for you that they have input on. I think there's actually some interest. It's interesting to stick to the model of how a corporate board of directors works, or how a nonprofit board of directors works, where you actually have experts in different areas, and your board is specially curated and selected in order to meet the needs that you have to accomplish the goals in the areas you selected in the previous section. The number is to your liking. I suggest 5 to 7 different people who serve as stakeholders, advocates, and mentors. It could be more. Just make sure it's not so many that you can't have regular check-ins with them. You want this to be a significant relationship in your life, and if you have 25 board members, it would be really difficult to rally them all. I'd also encourage you to have an odd number in the off chance that you might use a popular vote in order to make a decision. It helps to have an odd number, and you want to choose qualities of board members that they're going to be meet your needs. For me, that's to have a diverse board, so I don't have any blind spots. I'd like to, for me personally, I make sure that half of my board is female. I'm male gendered, and so I do that. I have an ethnically diverse board. I have people from different geographies, so that I'm always keeping things in mind that are not in my backyard. I aspire to have a more global personal board of directors, and I've been doing this since, the year 2000. And it's interesting that John brought up Richard Leiter earlier, because the article that spurred my thinking here was a year 2000 Fast Company article called "Create a Personal Board of Directors," which was written by Richard Leiter. So please tune in for that podcast. So I've been working on this for a long time, and I typically try to get my board together in person annually with an optional offer to pay for their trip. That's a major expense, but I find that investment is very helpful. But you don't need to go that far. You can have a virtual board of directors, and in fact, some of the literature online about this is you don't even necessarily have to have living people on your board of directors. If there are people you find to be a guiding light in your life who are no longer with you, or otherwise inspirational, have a imagine what they might do and advise and give them an honorary seat on your personal board of directors. So here's what you want to do. Define what what you want from your personal board. Communicate with them often. Put them on a regular meeting schedule with you. You want to manage them, and that includes all those tasks that I list behind there. It's important that you have a board of directors from whom you're willing to take criticism. So that's a word of advice if you're thinking about selecting a partner or a very close business associate or a family member. Is sometimes that advice, make sure it's someone you're willing to take that criticism from. And you want to link their participation to your goals. So basically the success of You Inc. is determined on how many of those goals on that first goal sheet were actually accomplished. If they're not accomplished, the board didn't do its job. So you want to have them be invested in your possibilities. And you want to thank them often, which we'll talk a little bit about in the celebration section. So here's a sample of some of the roles that might be good to look at. I won't read them to you, but take this worksheet, and again, on your second piece of paper, on your own time, please do think of who might fill these roles in your life, and that might be a good starting list. Of course, you want to go back and define the characteristics of what kind of board members you want before you finalize this list, and then go out and just outreach to them and say, hey, look, explain to them your goals and that you would like to have them help you accomplish them by serving as a personal board of directors member. So that's a very high investment ask to make of people in your life, and those 5 to 7 people are going to be instrumental in your progress. There's another group way that people can support you who might not have, might be more your peers. It might be going through the same things that you are. So I'm going to call those goal groups. And this is really an answer to modern day mentoring. Probably several of you have mentors. John and I were talking about mentoring earlier. We probably have mentors that don't know that we think that they're our mentors. Oftentimes we have mentors where the relationship kind of flames out because it's too one-sided and the mentor isn't getting enough out of it, or they haven't heard from their mentee. I know I've been on both sides of that before. So what we want to do here is have mentoring that doesn't fall flat, that has mutual benefit. So I share an example here. Let's say, I want to exercise 30 minutes a day. I want to get my health in order. So one of my strategies to get my health in order is to exercise at least 30 minutes a day. And my wife, Jessica, wants to lose 10 pounds. And my brother wants to eat healthily. And my sister wants to run a mid-length race at a personal best. We all have different goals, but they're complementary, and they would all support one another. So we could create a goal group where we hold each other accountable to our specific goals, but in doing so, actually, I'm not only going to exercise 30 minutes a day. I'm also going to be cognizant of my weight. I'm going to be eating more healthily and feeling better, and I might pick up a new hobby of running through my interactions with Cheryl in this fictional scenario. So basically, the idea here is to look for people who can mentor one another and for collective achievement. So how you want to do this is each of those goal areas that was on the left of the first worksheet. Select one of those at a time, and then keep your antenna up. Keep your social media listening up. Talk to friends about what their goals are. As a quick aside, it's actually such a great way to have intimate relationships and friendships too, is to have a conversation about what one's goals are and to seek to support them. It's refreshing how deep those connections are, as opposed to talking about, the weather or your favorite sports team. So recruit a handful of people to create a group where you're supporting one another so you can all have mutual benefit. And this goal group then can hold each other accountable and motivate one another. Here's a sample worksheet on how that might look. Again, on your third sheet of paper, you can begin to jot this down as well. The idea here, of course, is it's an arbitrary number of adding 4 people. I thought that was a good enough amount that the burden isn't on one person, and there's enough to feel like there's a group. And you can set this for as many goals as you would like. If travel is one of your goal areas, then you could find 4 other aspiring travelers, and you could share plans on how you're making the time and maybe even travel together. So I'm going to move on to our next one. This one is I'm calling collabo networking, and the idea, this is interesting. So, networking, we typically think of going to some hotel lobby or a or a happy hour somewhere in our professional industry. You're awkwardly dressed professionally because you don't know who you're going to meet, and you have a stack of business cards, and you're slinging those around, making superficial relationships that, for the most part, at best, result in a LinkedIn connection, which is certainly great. I love LinkedIn, but doesn't often go beyond that. And part of the challenge, so sometimes we leave those situations feeling a little disappointed because we're investing this time and effort. We're usually in a position of need. We're looking for a job or something when we're in that environment. We're looking for sales leads or something, and so I want people to feel. So it sometimes doesn't feel great, I guess, when you're not having success in those arenas. So this is my solution to that. My two most important networking rules are that, this is one of my key takeaways here. While it's important to meet people, it's more important to be someone that people want to meet. And secondly, we know that people do work with the people they trust. So the idea here is that let's stack the deck by creating environments where people want to meet us. We're not an individual in a sea of networkers, but we're actually the curator of a networking experience where people have self-selected that they want to meet you. So the last parts here, you see, we overestimate how easy it is to make these connections. We think, oh gosh, I really want this. I really want to meet someone at XYZ company. So you send a letter or you tweet at the person or something, and oftentimes that works. I happen to think those are great ideas, but sometimes you don't get answered. We all get a lot of spam emails. We all get a lot of outreach, and it's hard to respond to everything. But a way in there is we have existing networks that are often it's the 6 degrees of separation of Kevin Bacon rule, where you're pretty much connected to someone who's connected to someone who's connected to someone that you aspire to connect with. And we can leverage those rules and the idea of weak ties to connect with those people. If you're not familiar, there's the principle of weak ties, that there are people we have really strong ties with, your relatives, people you studied with, your closest coworkers and whatnot. And then there are people with weak ties, people you might have a more superficial or temporary relationship with. You might not know that well, but because they don't know everything about you, they don't make assumptions on who you would benefit from meeting, and they might be more willing to make introductions. I hope that's familiar there. So, so the idea here is pick one of those goal areas. Let's say it's my career or whatever it might be, an area where maybe I'm feeling like I could benefit from having more connections. Identify through that list of helpful friends that you had in the right column of the first spreadsheet. Identify a helpful friend in that area and get to know her or his goals, so you can help them. So it's a reciprocal, mutual benefit. And then, frankly, just bring those people together. I have a fictional example in here, but I'll share while you see those words in front of you. I'll share a real story. I'm interested in moving back. This is a true story of 2 years ago. I'm interested in moving back to Minneapolis in time to start and raise a family. I was single at the time. And so a friend of mine who is CFO of a music label in Minneapolis and I co-hosted a collabo networking event at a heyday in uptown Minneapolis. And he invited a bunch of people he thinks that I should meet. In Minneapolis, I invited a bunch of people that would support his goals, and we cross-pollinated networks. So we met a bunch of great people. I got 3 clients out of that, numerous great friends, and most importantly, I met my now wife, Jessica, who was invited to the event. And but it's interesting is in meeting in the environment of purpose, where you and your co-hosting friend are basically the benevolent hosts and frankly the stars of said event. It really puts your goals out there and attracts people who want to support those goals. You'll see here it's a great way to network up. So you'll see if you want to be, there's a professional aspiration you may have. I'll use a very LA example. Let's say I want to be a famous screenwriter and I've never written anything. Well, I could do this sort of collabo networking party with someone I do know who's flailing as a writer in the industry, but at least knows how it works, to get to pick not only her brain but those of her network. This sort of, and then once that's successful, if you meet someone interesting in that environment, you could offer to do a similar event with the person who's best positioned in that industry amongst your new friends that you met. So you're continuing to move, closer through adjacencies, closer to where you want to be in life. Hopefully that makes sense. So here's a way to write that out. Potentially, you could name the area that you wish to work in, and then work with your co-host or your trusted friend, your helpful friend, to identify people they know that maybe you should know. And then vice versa, so that there's all kinds of nodes of connection being made, and it's not just between you and your friend. And then make a plan, have a great event out of it. Great way to make friends, great way to professionally network, and to have overlap in those networks. Great. Moving in here to our next one. This is a term I made up called Six Celebrations. This is frankly, to hold yourself accountable, you need to create measurements. I don't know who said it, but it's a well-known adage that we are what we measure. And otherwise, the fuzzy goals, have fuzzy results. So if you have a goal of increasing your health, and you want to increase your stamina, you want to increase how far you can run or whatever it might be, or how frequently you exercise, you have a career goal or a spiritual goal, if you can put measurements against your activity and then celebrate the milestones of accomplishing that activity along the way, you'll stay motivated. You'll have a lot of fun. So this helps you keep focused, keeps motivated, have fun, and it also provides opportunities to accomplish your collabo networking parties and to seek mentors and build out your network that we discussed earlier, because you're hosting these events that are purpose-driven and are frankly are magnetic to other people, because people want to be around goal-oriented, successful people. So these 6 celebrations, I'll share how to do that. For each goal, plan celebrations. You can do this last minute, or you can do it in your upfront planning. I've done both. But you want to, as you accomplish different tasks that get you to your overall goals, you want to celebrate those with the people you're doing the goals with. So in that example of me exercising with Tom, Cheryl, and Jessica, when one of us accomplished our goals, let's take a moment to celebrate it. Let's congratulate, at a minimum, let's congratulate the person who accomplished it. Let's blow up their Facebook page with positive wall comments, whatever, small mini celebrations, maybe a happy hour, whatever it is that motivates you. Also, I like to plan milestone parties to keep me motivated along the calendar of the year. I'm really into throwing parties. You'll see it on my LinkedIn profile. So I personally throw events. I use New Year's as a goal-setting platform, and I try to have as many goal-driven conversations around New Year's. And then shortly after, on March 4th, I have a conversation. I check back in on those goals and make sure that I'm actually marching forth in that direction. If you get the joke there. It's the only sentence in the calendar. It's the only date that is a full sentence, March 4th. And I use my birthday as an acknowledgement. My birthday happens to be in the middle of the year, so it's a nice midway check-in point between my annual goal setting. So I use that as an opportunity to rally attention and support around my goals. And then also oddly, every 4 years I use leap year as an event. I have a belief that we're trained to think in 4-year increments because we go to college generally for 4 years. A lot of our milestone high school for a lot of us is 4 years. So we start to get this 4-year mentality, and you can accomplish a lot in 4 years. So I like to set longer term goals in association with each leap year, and then have a large celebration at each leap year, celebrating what had occurred over the last 4 years. So probably sounds like a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. And then as far as celebrating your area, your goal areas, when you have your big mega goal, whatever the major goal that all the tasks led up to, you want to make sure that you honor that with your personal board of directors so that they continue, so they can share in your success. They contributed greatly to it with regular check-ins and relationships and advice and introductions. So you want to make sure that they can share in that success. A mentor of mine who specializes in the sales, his strategy is he gives a nice bottle of champagne to his mentors when he sets the goals, and then they crack it open when they hit the goals. I think that's a fun and endearing way to celebrate success. And so that those milestones again are opportunities to share with the world that you're a goal-driven, exciting person who's on the scene, and which will make it easier to gather more attention and volunteers and mentors as you set future goals. Classic celebrations. Here's, again, this maps out what I just described. You have your goal areas, you have your goal, you may have some milestones along the way, and you want to celebrate those. Okay. I promised you 5 tips. I'm going to throw in an extra one, which I think is really interesting. Most of you in the business world are probably familiar with the acronym of CRM. It typically means Customer Relationship Management. It's a whole industry where marketers and business people use databases in order to keep their customers happy and make sure they're communicating with them in a strategic and organized way. And while that sounds kind of heartless to throw your network into a CRM system, I want to suggest that our relationships in general, both personal, professional, and otherwise, would benefit from caring relationship management. What that means is that if you do all those things we've already talked about, you set goals with helpful friends, you create a personal board of directors, you're having collabo networking events to expand your network, and you're working with goal groups to accomplish your goals, there's going to be a lot of people in your life, maybe more than you have now. It seems like a lot of work. So what we want to do is create some systems that make it easy to maintain those relationships. So my advice here is to create a system when you meet someone. For me, it's getting a business card and then emailing them right away something substantial about what I'm doing. So if you happen to be a small business owner or something, when you meet someone, whatever it is that you are passionate about, send them information about it right away and ask for permission to add them to your mailing list. So what I mean about the mailing list is if you're meeting a lot of people, it's going to be difficult to maintain daily one-on-one relationships with more than, say, 150 people. I believe social scientists say that it's tough to have intimate relationships with more than 150 people. So this mailing list will help you keep weak ties with this growing network that you're building. So this big mailing list, could be thousands and thousands of people if you are dedicated to relationship building. Send them a regular note. For a lot of people, it's the old, November, December holiday card that you send out with an update on your family. That might be your system. I'm suggesting here a little more frequent quarterly or semesterly email list recapping the big news of your life that you want to share with people, and then inbound attention might come in. And then have a smaller private list that you treat a little more carefully. For me, that's about 300 people. It's a lot, but it's important to me. And I always try to make sure I honor their birthdays, and with something more than a Facebook wall post. And then you can use a database, or you can just use, frankly, an Excel document or something to create tiers in this database with frequency targets. So for me, that means I'll start with the most important relationships. I will make sure that no matter what, I will, even if there's business travel, I will connect with my wife at least once per day. I will connect with my parents and some key relatives weekly or bi-weekly. My personal board of directors members, I will connect with at least every other week. I will, my boss, I will make sure that we at least have some FaceTime at least once a week, if not more often. But going down the list, I was in a fraternity at the university I'm not too connected with those guys anymore, but there's the guys I liked most, and there are, I have a note to make sure I connect with them live annually. And then I make a great effort to do that. And what that means for me is, this last weekend, frankly, I went through an old job where I had some really high quality coworkers that I fell out of touch with, and I went to each of their Facebook pages, found something interesting that they've been up to, and either commented on it or sent them a message to ask how they're doing. And so I make those little ticks at people to make sure that to create the feeling of serendipity, to keep my network alive and not dormant. So those are my 5 tips plus the bonus tip. So we're approaching here the Q&A section. But while we wrap up here, I want to remind us that we've learned a few tools to create communities of conversation for mutual benefit, and hopefully have a new framework to accomplish your goals. This is the framework we discussed. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about any of these areas. When in doubt, if you need a reminder, bring out that old Beatles song, which I've rewritten the words for. We're going to thrive with a little help from our friends. That's what we're looking to do here.
Absolutely.
So in the next week, if you can, I'd encourage you to finalize your goals and do some of these things we discussed using these tips. If you wish to, I'd love to look at your goals and give you any feedback. If you need any coaching, I'd be happy to give anyone on this call 15 minutes of coaching. That's not what I do professionally, but I do have a heart for it. But if you do it, I'm going to be most happy if you include a celebration for having completed your plan, because we want to celebrate each moment along the way. And with that, I'd love to keep in touch. I have some of my contact information here. I'm Clint Schaff on all the social networks, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And love to jump into some questions and answers.
All right. Well, we have a couple queued up, and for those of you who haven't typed in any questions, now's the time, and we have plenty of time to field some stuff. So let's jump into it. For a personal board of directors, do you recommend having people that are older, younger, or similar age?
Great question. I think so. My unsatisfying answer is I think it depends on your goals. However, I think it's always a good idea to spend time with people who are not like yourself. So I think it's easy to first draft, when you start to jot down your candidates for your personal board of directors, you're going to be writing down people who are often a lot like yourself, similar academic background, similar, maybe even the same career or other status. That's just like a natural thing. So I think what we want to do is break out of that so we can get advice from people who are a little bit dissimilar from ourselves. So I currently do not have a younger person on. Actually, that's not true. I have a young man that I used to mentor. I'm 38 years old. I have a 22-year-old on my personal board of directors. He's on there for many reasons, but his youth is one reason. Another reason is that he works in the area of kind of exponential technologies and artificial intelligence and all this kind of thing, and I don't want to be a dinosaur. I want to know about what's coming up next. So I have that, and I have I have a 72-year-old on my group as well, he's an improv actor, and he applies improv principles to business scenarios. So I have the whole cross section, and I'd encourage that as well.
Here's another question. I have trouble asking anything from people, usually preferring to go it myself. How can one get over this feeling?
That's a great question. I think, and for whoever's asking that question, if you want to talk about it offline, that's cool, so I can get into the particulars of it. But for the benefit of the group, with practice, that probably hurts, but I think I'd share with anyone who has that fear that it gets better every time, and that we typically know that with vulnerability breeds love and acceptance. So it sounds oversimplified, but if any conversation that I have that makes me uncomfortable, I just own the fact that it makes me a little bit uncomfortable, and I actually even share it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say in a situation like that, I might say, dear potential mentor, friend, I respect you a ton, and I was wondering if you'd support me in these goals. It's really, I'm going to be honest with you, I wanted to have a conversation with you. It's uncomfortable for me. But it's really important I do it because I'm really dedicated to these goals, and I admire you so much and would love to have your support.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very difficult. Someone would have to be a pretty evil being in order to reject that sort of outrage, because declaring the elephant in the room brings everyone comfort, in particular you, the asker of that support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially as I've talked to career changers, if you're reaching out to people, either to build the board of advisors or just simply do informational interviews, just simply being honest about, I'm trying to transition from career X to career Y. I don't know about artificial intelligence, but it's something I'm trying to educate myself on and get to know more. And I've seen that honesty help. And actually, I think anytime you're maybe connecting to someone who's maybe not already solid networking connection, the more you can just be open about your intentions and what you're kind of looking to get out of the situation or just the informational interview. That just really I think helps the person on the other side know what are you interested in connecting about.
That's well said, John. I mean, to help the person ask that question, I'd share. I think maybe there's 5 qualities off the top of my head that would help. Honesty, which we discussed, a little bit of humility, and the kind of swallowing deeply and sharing that this is hard for you to ask. Some flattery to explain why that person is someone whose input you value, goes a long way. And then the last 2 are passion and purpose. So just showing you're passionate about accomplishing these goals really generates so much enthusiasm. There's so many, it's very refreshing when someone isn't going through the motions. It attracts attention. And then purpose, what I mean here is hopefully it would make you less uncomfortable if you're sharing very specifically why you need their help.
Mm-hmm.
John said that really well. I'd add, if you can be really clear on what you're asking of them,
Yep.
Then it shares that you've really thought it through and you're really clear on what you need. The contrast to that, and most of us are guilty of this, is the old, hey, I'd love to get together for coffee and pick your brain. I think in 2017, most of us are too busy to have our brain picked over coffee. And so it's probably a better networking move to say, hey, as long as you have 15 minutes to help collaborate with me to discuss my goals as it relates to this career change or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
That is, or I'm starting a podcast and I would love you to be a guest on it. This is maybe a weird meta example, but John and I have known each other digitally for a couple of years, and I'd say the process of doing this webinar with him for the Gopher Alumni Association.
Mm-hmm.
We now have a stronger relationship. It's stronger than it would have been had we just had 15 minutes over coffee. Collaborating on a project really builds it's a quick turnaround way of basically having an experience with someone that has long-lasting value.
Agreed. We have quite a few questions lined up, so maybe we'll go into kind of lightning round here. Okay. Any tips on using networks to help refine and clarify your goals? So let's say if you're having a hard time defining those goals, maybe how do you use your network to help you refine them?
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's interesting, right? Like one of the goal areas was goal setting. So I had things like spirituality, physical fitness, etc. Those are very custom. But I think applying some of these strategies to goal setting is interesting. If you know someone, if there's someone in your network first degree or second, who is a strong goal setter. Seeking their mentorship on that area is a really interesting idea. Again, I'm happy to do that on a one-off scenario with you. And then I think the reason the personal this is helpful maybe to share. The personal board of directors I view as an ongoing, long-ish term commitment, and you can determine how hardcore you are about this. For me, I actually treat it like a real board where I have people serve terms. So the way I'm doing it right now is I have that commitment for a year. At the end of that year, they're off the hook. I'm not going to be talking to them every week anymore. I'm going to move on to other people, and that's how I handle it. So you could, if you have that longer term commitment with a PBOD, as I call it, then there's some room in there to check back in and say, to do goal refinement and say, hey, I have you on my board because you're someone I aspire to be like in my career, but maybe I'm not looking at this right. Maybe I should be thinking about a slightly different career. And to have that conversation with someone who's committed to, monthly or weekly conversations with you for a year is really powerful.
Here's another question. Would it be better that my personal board of directors know each other? Is there pros and cons to that?
Yeah, great. I think I think there's pros for convenience, but I would say I try not to do that. I don't. It's not on my list of rules, but I just think 5 to 7 people. The life is too short to not have a wide and diverse set of areas of interest and people. So also the more, if you're 5 to 7 people, if their networks don't overlap that much, that means there's more possible introductions to be made to accomplish your goals. So I try to keep it as wide as I can. But again, I mean, two of the people I have on my 2017 personal board of directors do know each other. They happen to live in different cities, so they still have very different networks, but we know each other through the same common friend, and that isn't a problem for me at all. For the most part, my personal board of directors members never meet. I do try to invite them to come visit me and I try to take care of them for a weekend as a thank you for their help. Basically a board retreat, if you will. But oftentimes they can't make it, and so they rarely interact with one another. So it is okay, I think, if they happen to know each other.
Awesome. Another person writes that that she sometimes has a hard time introducing herself at networking events, and so the question is, should I prepare a 1-minute bio, or sometimes what's referred to as the elevator speech, or what's kind of been your best approach, in in-person networking events where maybe you don't know anybody?
Yeah, I mean, so I think if you're doing that kind of networking, you want to have an elevator pitch, a less than 60-second explanation of who you are, what your motivations are, and what makes you tick, and to be able to share that. The more, I think one of the things that the opposite concern at cold networking events is wasting your time talking to someone for 25 minutes to be polite that neither of you wants to have the conversation. That's my bigger fear. Right. And so I think if you can get to the point, like, I want to get this out of this encounter, that person might be able to help you, or they might know someone else that they can say, I just talked to this person, you should talk to them. That's because everyone, it's like speed dating for networking. So I think to employ that strategy. But I quickly want to say in today's webinar, I'm actually suggesting maybe changing your focus to a different type of networking. And rather than doing that, how about tapping into your existing network of classmates, coworkers, whatever it might be, that who do you already know that's the kind of person you want to know more of, and ask them to do a networking event with you. That's the collabo networking idea. And that way you won't have that challenge because you're going to have a mutual friend with those people, and you've been primed as the star of the show. So I mean, imagine this person that you like and admire that's close to your goals, bringing 5, 6 people like them. They all want to meet you. They came with the purpose of meeting you, and that's such a warm crowd that it goes to my rule that I share, which is, it's good to meet a lot of people, but it's even better to be someone that people want to meet. So those collabo networking events that you can host are an opportunity to stack the deck for you to ensure that you feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm. How much time do you generally spend in your calls or meetings with your mentors or board of directors, like during your sessions? Is it like you were talking about maybe just a 15-minute touch base or maybe something that's maybe more thorough or longer?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that down to a science. I have it down. I try to do it. I mean, at least 15 minutes. I like to do 15-minute phone calls and 1 hour in persons. I feel like anything over 15 minutes on the phone, people are multitasking and working on things or reading a magazine, and so I don't like that. So I like to keep their attention for 15 minutes, and I always respect their time by never going over what we scheduled. And then in person, I think it's not worth driving across town or doing whatever for anything less than an hour generally. So I try to do in persons. Let's say roughly every third or fourth meeting I'd like to do in person, and then in between do 15-minute phone calls.
Here's a good question. Kind of from your experience doing, kind of setting up in-person events, getting people together. So when you appeal to these cross-pollinating networks, um, uh, what do you do to make them actually want to attend such an event? What's your best tips on kind of framing up those engagements?
Yeah, I mean, so I find that people are craving community. So I mean, it's a pretty attractive offer to say, hey, not only do you want to come meet me, but you're going to come meet a friend of yours that you like and admire, and they invited you. So that's partly why they attend, right? Because um, and it's very clear that there's a purpose. So it isn't just like people sitting around wasting time. It's like clear that we are trying to work toward this goal. And if you can try to, I mean, almost promote who else might be there. So like, hey, these types of people are going to be there. They can see, wow, this is there's some known quality here that exceeds what I might get at a regular networking event. And then finally, I try to do it in a fun setting. I try to do it at a restaurant that's opening. Oftentimes, if you're pulling 12 people of any significance together, you can probably get free appetizers at a restaurant that you like, or you can get around. I try to buy the first round, and then after that, it's on everybody. I've done this at karaoke. I had a karaoke party where the idea was let's dare each other to sing karaoke, but it was a loose tie to the idea of setting goals and daring ourselves to be better. But let's I dare you to sing this White Wedding, Billy Idol or whatever. So I try to add some of my funky quirks into the networking to keep it fun, and also so it doesn't feel like a job. Like all of this needs to be fun, or else it's not going to sustain.
Absolutely. And just one last question. One of the webinar attendees writes, how do you go about making sure people do not feel like you're using them for connections?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question because a lot of people are uncomfortable with I'm somewhat uncomfortable with some of the terminology I'm using. I think by always seeking to serve. So in every one of these cases, I'm putting together peer goal groups for their benefit, right? Like they shouldn't do it if they're not going to get a benefit. Now, when I used to ask people just to mentor me out of the good of their heart, that felt less comfortable because I was asking for something and I didn't have a lot of value to bring back. But in that scenario, I'm offering mutual value, and they shouldn't do it if they're not going to get value. Same with the personal board of directors. Generally, I found that most people want this kind of structure in their lives, and at a minimum, they're curious how I'm doing this, and they're more than willing to help because they find that spitballing with me about my life gives them insights on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the collaborative networking parties, like I'm throwing really fun parties, often providing some form of entertainment or sustenance, and providing some really good friends. I mean, again, that the event where I met my wife, that was a wild. There's 30 people. We each invited 15 people, and the fact that I've done business with a third of those people, married one of them, and then connected with and that was all on the other side of the equation. The 15 people I brought, I just had a good chance to reconnect with them. So I think you're just always seeking to serve and provide value is the antidote to feeling like creating a feeling that people are feeling used.
Well, Clint, you have definitely provided value and insights today, and just really appreciate all the time and effort you've put into this presentation, and also your willingness to be a friendly ear to other alumni as well. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, all you Gophers out there, and we'll love to keep in touch. Go
All right.
Gophers.
Thank you. Go Gophers. All right, everyone. Well, that's it. Great webinar. As I mentioned earlier, we have a bunch more coming up this spring. And so definitely encourage you to sign up for those and hear from, we have just a great wide variety of presenters and perspectives coming up. So I hope you do enjoy them. And again, these webinars are made possible in part by members of our Alumni Association. And you can learn more at umnalumni.org/membership. So, hey, if you've liked this webinar, consider becoming a member and help us create a stronger global community of alumni and friends. So that's the conclusion of today's webinar. Go Gophers! This is John Ruzek wishing you a great day.